At least StreamYard is telling me we are live.
Yeah.
I am not seeing it on LinkedIn yet. Maybe there's like a slight lag. Hello. If you guys can see us and hear us, can you just let us know in the chat? Hey, LinkedIn is saying we are live. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Stories by COG. This is a weekly session that we are planning on conducting because so many reasons. Over the years, our Center of Gravity has conducted so many projects across verticals and across areas, geographies as well. There are so many stories that we've accumulated over the years, so many beautiful, poignant stories that can all teach all of us different nuances of brand strategy and community building and so many different aspects of marketing. And it's a wonderful platform, and we wondered that it's a good time for us to start sharing these stories. So here we are. Welcome. This is going to be a regular session. So if you're here today, I hope we see you next time again. Until then, let's move on. We have Naveen today. We're going to be talking about a very specific aspect of community building for brands. Communities are very important for brands. We all know that. Let's not get into the basics of that. What's more important is who do you get as part of your community when you're building your brand's community. Who do you get? And more specifically, who do you not get? There are so many nuances to this, and that is exactly what we're going to discuss today with Naveen. Hi, Naveen.
Hello. Hi,
Yes.
everybody.
You look so nervous right
I am. That's like a whole different construct to answer questions. Put on the hot seat. Do you want me to answer that or directly jump in and tell what my perspective is, or ask me?
My first question to you is, I want to take one step back. My first question to you is, why do you target people to build when you're building a community for a brand? Let's start with that first.
That's an interesting question, actually. If you ask people who have built community outside the construct of brand building, they don't think of in terms of targeting. Let's say communities form up everywhere where people want help and want to share things. That could be in your neighborhood, it could be in your apartment complex, wherever. They don't think in terms of targeting. But I think when we try to form communities, especially for brands are starting to look at forming communities for various reasons. Some of them start because they feel like, especially on social media, organic reach is hard to come by. So instead of buying your audience every time, maybe we can foster something and that will get me additional reach. Whatever your reasons are, we are accustomed to think in terms of target audience, a profile, a persona. There is in our minds as brand creators, and that a certain audience is whom I am going after. This is who is going to bring me my business. This is who I want to build my reputation with a brand. And therefore, we have an idea of who this intended target is in our minds, because we've been used to doing that in the broadcast mechanism of sending messages out and expecting consumers to buy. So we've kind of been ingrained into that thinking. So a lot of communities, and we've been building communities on behalf of brands for about 8 years, and failed many times and succeeded partially. And now we are in this space of telling people how to build communities. And our experience has been that the model is different. The paradigm is different. Who you think your target audience is when you are broadcasting, and who actually is the one you need to foster your community with, there is a chance that they may overlap. But the larger chances they actually don't. It's a discovery of your audience that is what really happens in community. So when we think of the right audience, and I hate to use the word target, it's all very military and you're kind of shooting at your customer and expecting a response. But who comes towards you to join your community is a discovery process. So this inside out perspective, that's what I wanted to talk about in this session also. This inside-out perspective is important as your starting point, but really who comes to form your community is not what you think is going to happen. I'll give you an example. All this sounds abstract, etc.
Good. I was actually just going to ask you that.
There was one of our earlier communities that we started was for a apparel brand, and now this is a brand that is in the, I guess you would say, how do you call it? It's a entry level brand if you are migrating from having shopped at the street and now you're going to go to a mall. So it has all the construct, has large stores and 200, 300 stores across a big part of the country. All the paraphernalia that you'd expect in a department store it has, but it has primarily its own brands. It creates it. It's one of the big brand houses. And it's a middle class brand. By that, what I mean is the highest priced item in that store may be in the range of 800 to 850 rupees. So you can get a sense that, a family can go and shop there, and reasonably middle class people who've been used to shopping on the street get a very different experience and can buy branded items from the store. Now, when they were targeting their consumer, they had in their mind their desired target, right? It will be, you can imagine younger people who like to shop more, a certain kind of demographic in terms of education and exposure, etc. These would be considered their cutting edge guys. And when you're trying to build your brand in advertising, you think in those terms. The cutting edge guys who are more eloquent, who have choices, who still choose me, are the best people to build with, and everybody else follows the example set by these guys. And we would want them as our target. And we had gone and tried to build community. And for a brand of this nature, there is usually a big loyalty base. And they may have 20 lakh, 30 lakh people in their loyalty base. And you look at your best customers. You want your best customers to join your community. Obviously, that's their starting point. So you look at the peak of the pyramid and say, look, the guys who've been shopping with me more frequently, because I know this, I know the purchase behavior, I'm collecting the data at the back end, who are shopping with me more frequently over time, it's a reasonable expectation that these guys love me. So let me start building the community there, which is where we also started. So we invited using all the humility that is required to build community. And the brand and everybody went on this path to get people. And we had, I think, around somewhere under 1,200 odd people who joined this community from a large base. We felt good. Wow, 1,200 people in my community right off the bat, and we are engaging. But when you later on you speak to each of these community members, the ones who really engage with it, who really are trying to participate in this new space, are not these cutting edge guys. They are middle class guys who feel a great affinity for your brand, to whom your brand is actually very, very deeply connected to. So what this means is our assumptions are fine for us as a starting point, but really your community, you have to actually find a way and a means to find out who are your best customers emotionally, not transactionally, emotionally. There may be an overlap, sure. We found a few guys. But if you have 1,000 people in your community and let's say 20 are engaging with you deeply, in hindsight, I would have liked to have spent a lot more time and start finding those 20 people one by one to build my community so that we also feel good about creating it, and the intensity of the relationship is very good. And that's the learning that we've had. Now, if I have to start it all over again and we don't handle this community anymore, I think we would have gone about it very, very differently. And so that's the sense.
How would you, what did you do back then, and what would you do right now that you have learned this lesson?
I think our thinking was to follow the best practices of giant communities that you see outside that have been formed by brands, and they all have this, they have such a large pool of consumers who interact with them frequently. So even a small proportion of it, the numbers run into masses, and you all get excited about sharing numbers and metrics and engagement levels and how many clicks and how many comments come. Today, if I have to start a community, I would say that you look at the customers that you traditionally, when you're trying to engage with customers, why does a brand want a community? All the communities that we form for brands, they were primarily for consumer insight. And because we come from the area of understanding human beings and therefore using insight to make strategic decisions. So naturally, the brands that came to us and we were equipped to build communities, we weren't like advertising and reach building communities. Our communities was let's find the right people to build insight with, right? And if you're doing research, a lot of the times you want to ensure that you're getting the right customer. And there is a proponents to go and say that, let's say we don't use recruiters and all that. So when you go to the sales ecosystem, there's always a feeling in the client's mind. Look, you ask my sales guy, hey boss, give me 5 customers of yours that I want to talk to. You know that the client and everybody feels that he's going to give you the best customers to whom he has served well, right? That's a natural tendency because he's worried at the back of his mind that, look, these guys are secretly trying to evaluate me. So let me give the guys who are not going to abuse me. So I'll only give you those and I don't give you the rest of the people. And that's the natural tendency. We would want to meet them, but we would also want to meet the other guys, maybe the guys whose experience has been poor. That would be the conditioning that we try to build community around. Build research around. But when you're trying to build a community, this bias works perfectly because you want to build the community with the people whose experience of your brand has been fantastic. And that's what you want to start with because the love is already built there. Community building is slow, hard work to continuously build a feeling in the minds of the people that we belong to one tribe.
So let me hold you there.
Whether that is your brand or your head. Yeah.
Let me hold you there. Are you trying to say that if you had to go ahead and start building a community today, you will go to the salespeople and you would ask them to recommend some of their best customers?
Yes.
Is that what did you do earlier?
Earlier, we would have gone through the pyramid and said, we look at the best customers and assume randomization and my invite. Let's say I'm sending an electronic invite out saying, hey, I'm signing a community. Would you like to join? Many people come and join. And frankly, what you discover in the back end is many people come and join without even understanding what the hell they joined. So a large part of a community manager is to interact with the people who have signed up to tell them what they really signed up for. And this is like hard work of almost encouraging attrition to find your golden mean. And a lot of the activity in the initial stages is to just tell people, this is what you signed up for, are you still game for it? And then it's 1,000 people you've got, and let's say you've got 50 people whom you can engage with. That discovery process takes 6 months. If I had gone to the salespeople and said, who are the people who absolutely love us? If I had gone to my family and friends, that's where I would start. Let's say a team of 5 people inside the brand, marketing and research and R&D and whoever says, we need better engagement with our customers. Let's start with 10 people. I literally say, let's get 10 people. We are 5 and maybe they are 10 or they are another 5. We start with the people with whom our relationships are actually very good because we actually invested in creating a feeling with them over time so that they trust. There's an element of trust already filled in. In traditional research mechanism says, no friends and family. They're all biased. They're going to give you falsehoods. Here, you're trying to build love. Wherever love is possible to build first, start there because then you will build your community together. One of the core constructs of building a community is to lose status and control as a brand. If you're in the advertising stage, you always think of your brand as this pedestal that has to be aspirational to your audience. In community, it is not, the community is not yours. Even if you are a brand that is fostering the creation of a community, the community belongs to all of us. Your status in that as an individual is only that, as somebody who loves and wants to nurture this community. If you take yourself on a pedestal, you tend to behave almost parent to child, expert to dilettante kind of communication. It breaks down very quickly, right? When you're giving very different incentives for people who stay, and you'll find that the community survival rate tends to drop. Actually, globally, 70% of communities that people start with all good intentions, with all the people looking at it, they fail. Within 6 months, they fail. That people just give up the energy and says, "Chodo yaar, let's go back to the old ways of working." I always tell people, you're building community, you're looking for compounding interest. You are nurturing and nurturing and nurturing and slowly growing this without ever dropping the level of intensity of love you feel for, the brand, or not even the brand, the category in which the brand operates, So if you think about one of the best communities that's touted worldwide, right? Harley Davidson owners, right? Which is where everybody will talk. I don't think they spend even $1 million in advertising every year. Right? They don't. Their sales are always through the roof because people buy. It's like a legacy. You give it to your child, and you induct new people into the brand. The community is one of the strongest pillars of building this brand, and the level of technology they use is minimal. I mean, there's hardly anything. So when we initially started forming communities, you looked up to the OnePluses and the Samsungs, which have millions of members, and you think that's where it is. Now, in after all these learnings, now I look to community building where I want to look at communities that were formed without all this paraphernalia, where the feelings of intensity is so strong that what can I glean from that to build community? So now I look at Alcoholics Anonymous, right? How do you create, in so many countries, a program with absolutely no authority structure, but the sacredness of what you have created is transmitted from person to person like that. I would look at religion. If you look at Jesus and the apostles, the 12 people who had a feeling that they were doing something worthwhile, that took it upon themselves to spread the gospel of Christ across the world and find other people who are willing to work with them. It had to happen through personally delivering value to the other end. It's not just command and control structures that usually communication firms are used to. If you're building love, start with where you as a human being have already built love. So if some of your salespeople have gone the extra mile, that's an indicator of love. If there are customers you have screwed over, but you had the humility to go back and repair that relationship, where you've actually proven that you're a brand that cares, there is evidence of love over there. Those are the people I'll go to first, and I'll have to choose them and tell them, let's build a community together. Not that we are planning to build a community. Would you like to join us? That's a very different narrative. We'd like to build something together.
So I have a question here, Naveen.
Right.
You said that one of the reasons why brands build community, especially in the sphere of work that you are in, is to get insights, consumer insights, right?
Sure.
You also said that this strategy does not apply to research because the worry is that you will get a skewed perspective. Wouldn't that apply to this as well? The insights that you get from these customers, wouldn't that be skewed as well?
Not necessarily. See, one of the constructs we talk about is the idea of a loyalist of your brand. And we say that if you're talking about your brand, the loyalist of your brand, by that, I don't just mean your transactional loyalist. Your transactional loyalist is somebody who frequently buys from you. Is a good space to start. But you will find out in the course of conversations. This is what we do on the strategy side of our business. Let's say if you're doing a project for a brand, we say, look, if it's an established brand, or even if it's a new brand, the people who chose you, despite having other options out there, and especially chose you frequently that are stuck by you, those guys see you very closely to know what are all your strengths that are not actually apparent to you. You think you are A, there's actually B, and it is seen in their minds. So by conversing with them, understanding who they are and why they choose you is the foundation of strategy. And equally, I'm sure your competition has their own set of loyals. A lot of brands feel like they are doing everything right by the guys that are in their ecosystem, or they believe they own these customers. Not true. There are very small proportion of who see the brand in its true light and its magnificence. Everybody else sees shards of this in their vision. Study your true loyalists. Understand what is the magnificent expression of your brand that they see. And there are large people in between these two extremes, your loyalists and your competition's loyalists, large people in this middle, to whom they're agnostic to both ends. They haven't chosen anything. They're probably unaware of your glory. Tell them about your glory and move them towards your side. That's the essence of strategy. So if I take the same loyalist perspective, I want the emotional loyalists to whom you have built a relationship with your brand, your people more than your brand. Today's a lot more of your true expression of your brand is through your front line and the experiences you have, whether that's call center, whether that's website, whether that's chat, etc., not just your advertising. There is a human connection that's been formed somewhere that you're going to leverage to create community. So it's not about bias. So even in the strategy side of things, if I'm getting insights from my loyalists, that's a good thing. Brands usually think that I have to study the competition guy to find out why he's on the other side so I can drive more to my side. That's the hardest thing to convince. You're really playing to their strengths. So find out from your guys where you stand and communicate to the other side. You're better off doing that than going to the people who have vague notions of your brand. Then he says, oh, they don't know this about me. Let me tell them that. But your loyalist says, actually, your brand is not what you think it is. It is these four things. That's why I come to you. And you told the unaware guys something that probably doesn't matter. So I think the discovery of your brand strength, loyalists matter. So when you build your community, loyalty and fealty based out of love, if you can nurture, any brand can be Harley Davidson. I genuinely believe that. It's not like only a lifestyle brand that is cool and sexy can have, loyalists that are tattooing their brand onto their body, like you see about Harley Davidson. You operate either as a brand or in your category that is solving something magical or beautiful in the consumer's mind. That's the basis of choice, right? So if you have done that, if you've taken something, so we talk about that one of the communities we built was for a home, I guess you were like a home painting brand. Now, the narrative there was that even the technology partner with whom we found a forum here said, look, boss, ye chalne wala nahi. This is not going to work. People paint their houses once in 5 years. Who the hell is going to come and engage with you on a community regularly? You'll continuously be recruiting and churning people in and out. But you don't build a community around the act of painting, which I agree with you. It's an infrequent activity for most people. You can build communities with the painters and the contractors and the architects to whom it's both their life and business. And that's entirely fine to build. But to build a community of consumers engaged with painting is unlikely to endure, right? Unless you are continuously recruiting. And this community at that point in time was one of the best in the world, etc. And the simple reason was we didn't make it about painting. People are interested not in painting. Painting is a means to an end. They are interested in decor, which is an ongoing engagement. They are interested in the emotions around the house. If you center around that, these are timeless. You can own every conversation that works there. For example, in one of these communities, you do activities that a brand will hesitate doing. So one of the community managers said, we are all at home, we are locked, whatever, there is nothing else to be done. What are we going to do on weekends? The community you discover around is a whole bunch of homemakers who have kids, etc. One of the community members says, hey, I teach Zumba. Great. Let's have a class online on Zumba and let's all of us, shake our stuff in whatever manner we might, because it's essentially about bonding. If you had tried to do it in the traditional construct of a brand trying to put out a Zumba class, you'd have to go through the command and control structure, ask 20 questions, says, why are we aligning ourselves with Zumba? Does this matter to a brand? Nothing. People want to do Zumba, you do it. If my community today wants to, I don't know, sit and do origami for whatever reason, and I am actually a financial services brand, in the community, I do it. That's what my community wants. My idea is to be one of them, not be me preaching to them about what they should be about. If you found love, it is multi-dimensional. If you look at a brand also.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, this is very interesting what you're saying, Naveen. It's just, how do I convince my boss that this is a good activity to conduct, considering the fact that it's so far away from who I am as a brand? Like, let's assume I'm a financial services brand and I'm conducting an origami or a Zumba workshop. How do I convince my boss that, yes, this is the need of the hour?
It isn't. See, it's an interesting construct, right? We have been grained in, the entire discipline of creation of brands and brand management came up in the post-industrial revolution. Until then, you didn't really have brands and labels. And then once the advertising industry in the 60s started, etc., where you had this means of mass media and you could broadcast one thing about a brand. So you try to own certain associations with your brand. Of course, you're trying to induce human emotions into your brand using your communication and give feeling, and people buy meaning. I buy that entirely. But you take your entire complexity of a brand, break it down to its essence that you think, what we call positioning, etc., and says, this is the core of it. Tell it consistently, tell the same thing, tell it 100,000 times everywhere. So I'm consistent. So I take this one space in the consumer's mind. And, if I'm Colgate, then I am the trusted by doctors. I am trusted protection everywhere. Now, Colgate absolutely is trusted protection. But what I'm saying is, Colgate might have hundreds of other dimensions because of the nature of its people, the nature of its work, etc. That actually gets diminished when you only choose one and expand it. Today's brand building is multi-dimensional. A brand is much more rich. If I take any one of us, if a brand is best expression of a brand, we discover it through a process called brand personality, which is saying that really powerful brands appear to us as human beings. Human beings embed human qualities to inanimate things as much as brands. So we can say this brand behaves like this, it has these kinds of values, so ye nahi karega, wo karega, etc. We almost humanize it to tell which one is one versus the other. And a human being is multidimensional. There are rich, different aspects to a brand. So I can be cutting edge and still be humble. I can be A and B. Those different facets of the brand can get expressed. So if a home space brand decided to do Zumba, it says that I am a regular guy. That doesn't have to be thought so tight and fragmented. Not fragmented, no, pigeonholed in only one dimension. When you try to expose, you're oversimplifying the possible richness of your brand. And in your community to the people who already love you, you can show all the dimensions of your brand, because every one of them builds brand affinity. I don't say in broadcast, go and start doing Zumba. That's what all I'm saying. In your community, you can do this.
So where do you draw the line, though? At what point in time would you say that, fine, we can do this, but no, this is not something that we would want to get into? How do you draw the line?
It's usually very easy. If you don't want the brand to be associated with things that you think will diminish the brand, you can always have a conversation with the community and say, look, the brand cannot be standing for this. But in the community, you have to understand the community itself is a brand. It is the collection of the entire people. We don't say that, okay, this brand did this. So if you took a Harley Davidson owners group as an example, because it comes to your mind, there will be, Harley Davidson has an original association even with bikers gangs. It will still be there, and that adds a certain cutting edge value to the brand. But the brand is also fairly mainstream. Today it's about fathers and kids and women, and they've broadened it, right? They have not said, no, we are not that, we are this. We are an all-encompassing things. Earlier you could have said, if it's a sharp brand, you don't diminish the cutting edginess of your brand and mainstreaming it. Today it's able to hold both worlds together. You can have biker gangs who still have Harley Davidson, and you can have 40-somethings who are trying to rediscover their mojo, and you can have grandfathers and grandsons who are tinkering along with the brand together. It doesn't take away from the brand. It's all encompassing, right? You don't have to reduce it to only sharpness. It can handle sharp positions and rich things in the context of a community, because the people are different. I'm acknowledging that my people are different, and yet we have a shared love for whatever is the shared purpose of this community, whether that is home decor, whether that is do-it-yourself financial services, whether that is not paying too much for apparel and focusing on the things that matter. It's not just about your brand. You're finding this shared universe that you all decide to inhabit. In the case of Alcoholics Anonymous, the entire original gospel is very simple. It is an affliction, not a curse or a lack of morality. If you look at their quotes and how they formed, look at the wisdom of the people who started. They were very deep Christians who started this movement. They had the wisdom to think at that point in time, if I have to convince the world at large that, that we can form solidarity and help people who are fighting with this disease, to give them shared support and a listening mechanism and a buddy system to pull them out of it, we may need a higher cause, some divine belief to compel us to stay the course. But that is not defined by religion. There is nothing about Christianity. So if you're an atheist, you can be part of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're a Muslim, you can be part of it. If you're anybody, the program still works for you. And the entire people in the community across the world behave the same way without any command and control structure, because you have learned from the way people have behaved with each other. Why can't we use the same things? Look at how brands got built in during the coronavirus. So many people were locked inside home. A lot of women in your neighborhoods, this is happening in neighborhoods across India, at least I can see, who have an ability to cook. started home-based businesses. Why? Because today you have Google payments and UPI payments, so you can take payment over the phone. You can have some sort of delivery mechanism in your neighborhood that takes care of it, whether that is Swiggy or otherwise, or if it's some guy you employ or you yourself are doing home delivery, whatever that is, right? How did they market their products? They formed a WhatsApp group. They told people, this is what I create. You gave your food to the first people who bought it from you, who are likely to be your best friends. They gave you feedback. They got you your new customers. They didn't know any of these marketing jargon and everything else like that. They formed community because community building comes to human beings very naturally. We have been doing that for centuries. Yeah, we are social animals. That's the reason we are the dominant species on the planet. Not because we are physically much bigger. Our brains, in proportion to our bodies, are incredibly big. We can hold ideas in our head and associate by that. We form friendships more than bloodlines. No other species does this. We're naturally designed to build community because it's evolutionarily it is what has made us a dominant species. We decide to do that naturally. In brand management and communication, we have created this construct that is actually artificial, where somebody broadcasts, somebody else receives the message and is supposed to buy certain things, and you're trying to continuously maintain distance. Actually, human beings are supposed to come together for things. That's our natural inclination. And communities is one way of enabling that. There can be other mechanisms of doing it, but one of the strongest things is community formation. And I think the brands that are doing it have done it across categories. It has nothing to do with the category you operate in. A lot of clients will say, oh, my category, consumers don't even care about it. Yeah, they just want my product, they want to go. If I go out and try to talk to people, nobody wants to talk to me. But you don't change as a human being just because you've operated from one category to the other. It's still people to people. They are willing to listen as long as you don't make it about what you make versus what is it that we all love, because we are connected by something.
And I think engagement for the sake of engagement and not for an end goal.
Absolutely. You should measure only that. You should measure the stories. I hate community managers who have been trapped into the space of saying, what is the size of our community? Is it now in the lakhs? What is the level of how many clicks and how many comments? And I fall into the same trap. How many comments did you get? That's only one measure of it. Yeah. I'm saying if somebody in your community invited the community manager to their wedding, and it's a short one, that's a remarkable story in and of itself. That creates an affinity for your brand. The number of stories you will create like that is a far better measure of the intensity of relationship you have, not the size of the relation, the intensity. So if your community is only 100 people, but is really intense, far superior than having 10,000 people where the intensity is shaky.
It's like how they say, it's better to have 5 really good friends than 500 Facebook friends whom you never meet.
Your friends, your 3 a.m. friends are your 2 friends. No? Baki sab are just acquaintances and your transactional and your relationship. These ones, it's like that movie in Good Will Hunting where he says, right, why does he hang around with all these goons? Because each one of them will take a baseball bat to anybody who tries to take him down, because that's the intensity of that relationship. It's exactly the same thing. And small businesses who don't have this marketing jargon in their heads naturally do it because they don't know any other way of doing it. It's only when we become big, we do the other aspects of brand marketing. And I'm not knocking it. I think that's required for reach and messaging. Build community also. Over time, you'll find that this pays off more than the other things. It's almost, in my mind, it is future-proofing your brand. It's no longer a choice whether to build community or not. Sorry, I kept monopolizing.
Circling back to our topic of the conversation about finding the right people. Rajesh Gopal has a very interesting idea. He's saying that in lots of situations, it is as important to engage with non-buyers as well. For they actually tell you what's not working with your brand. It helps unlock new opportunities for growth if you're able to develop new value propositions. What are your thoughts on this?
Very good question, Rajesh. I'll just nuance it a little better. I think rather than looking at the non-buyers of your brand, if I have to find out what are the weaknesses in my brand, we have chosen always to say, look at the people who were engaging with you in the past but have stopped doing it. They saw your brand for what it is, and now they have moved to something else. They will tell you what the chinks in your armor is, which means your ex-girlfriend will tell you where you're wrong because she has seen you very well, right? Rather than some random stranger, because she's seen you in your best times and now she's seen you in your worst. If you can foster a conversation there, she will tell you where the things that need to be improved are from her vantage point, because there was love before. So you can rekindle in somebody else. I'm not saying you'll get your ex-girlfriend back, but she'll tell you where you stand, rather than going to a random stranger and asking what do you think about it. I think you'll not get the right answer. So the construct is love, and the intensity of the relationship is strongest. You've seen this, right? For example, I think the early 2000s, Dell, for example, had the entire issue with an exploding laptop. The batteries used to catch fire, and this was the early days of YouTube, and they pretty much got rogered everywhere. It was the largest recall in the history of technology, other than automobile, etc. Some 4 million laptops were recalled, they replaced, they did all the things that they did. And they later on started Dell forums when they were starting their community. Some of the best people that engaged with them came from the people whose laptops had issues. They had the fire, and Dell took it back and fixed the relationships. That is the intensity of actually having discovered your weaknesses and found your loyalists, etc. So I would lean to the ex-girlfriend analogy, if you will, or the ex-boyfriend analogy. They have seen you; they're in a better position to evaluate. So I think that would be my
Interesting.
go-to belief.
It's almost like every time I have a conversation with one of you guys, in one way or the other, I think you do end up touching upon the human-centeredness of your overarching strategy as a brand. There is a lot of humaneness, for want of a better word, in every thought, every decision making. So it's very interesting. It's almost like you keep circling back to your parent idea, which is human-centered strategy, and it's beautiful to see the application of that sort of an approach in all of its different forms and nuances. We have another question actually. Navin would love to know your thoughts for starting community in social channels versus starting in community SaaS platform like Mighty Networks, Habitat. What will be the pros and cons? Chitra is asking.
Hi, Chitra. I think it's a very good question, and we've also done all this, right? We have done communities in SaaS platforms. We have done it in social networks, etc. But actually, now where we come from says, forget about the platform. It really doesn't matter at this stage. You can start on WhatsApp. You can start on a mailing list. The platform conversation dominates, and it dominated us also to choose which platform will we build this, because the tools are available. And if you look at all the chatter out there, there's a lot of tools marketing, and every one of them is educating how to build community and why their platform is the best one to build it on. The fundamental thing to understand is community is a feeling, just like a brand. The true brand is a feeling you create coherently in somebody's mind that you intend to, and that is what the association. Community is a feeling we want to create amongst the members of the community, including ourselves, that we belong together, that we are one. To create that feeling, you actually need human interaction, face to face. So if Zoom can create that feeling, meeting personally, helping each other out, working on things together is what community creation is. Platforms can allow you to scale, but they can't, by mechanisms, help you create this feeling. One of the best communities we created. We had the pleasure of starting. We didn't create it. It's the wrong term. Was for one of our projects for a retail brand in beverages, and your QSR kind of brand, right? And this was an internal community with the frontline staff of that community, right? Like baristas and that kind of stuff. And it was a coffee brand. And because we wanted to create a community to engage with the people in that project to find some nuances and insights. Now, the moment we created the community, some 400 people joined, because they had the list and it went from the leadership, etc. We didn't even have to tell what should we work on it together. They started posting photographs of what they were creating in their cafe every day, right? Now, the brand's internal thinking at that point in time, because we had the benefit of conversations with people in the leadership, they felt like compared to their competitors, their staff maybe were not up to that quality of aesthetics and exposure because they came from a certain background and etc. And that needs to be improved. You look at the intensity of the feeling in the community day in and day out. I don't have to even tell what should we do together. They naturally came and says, "This is what I'm creating." They appreciated each other's work. You fostered a feeling within 15 days across the country that these people saw their jobs, one part of their jobs as creative activity, and that needs to get encouraged. Why did this get formed? It wasn't because of the platform, because the feeling already existed. They already had it in their minds that every day they were creating new things, and that is what sparked. The leadership didn't know it. I think creating that kind of solidarity, camaraderie by going on a journey together. This is where we say when you're starting a new community, you decide with the initial community members, what do you want to build together, create for the next set of people to make life useful for them. You created something of value to give to the next. You're almost paying it forward. So community creation is going on a journey together and say that when we succeed, a large number of people would have come to us, and that's what we want to keep fostering again and again. That this community will grow, not that this brand's business will grow. The brand almost has to accept that if the community grows, my business will grow. I mean, it's not like people don't connect A versus B, but you have the humility to say, if I fostered a large set of people working in my space, my business will naturally grow, and people make the connection. They understand altruism and help the brand that has been altruistic. We've done that in our lives. No? You see it in our human lives, where various stories where you'll say somebody has given of themselves very freely over the years when they are in crisis or when they need help. Armies turn up. I've seen it in organizations that may not have won all the awards, but when they have an alumni meet, people come from all over the world because it was something powerful you imbibed or you're given to them. The same thing can be done for brands also, in the context of community, not in the context of broadcast. I haven't figured that out yet.
I think this in many ways answers what Hiral is also asking. She's asking, what is the common element of community engagement in pre-digital and digitally social phase?
Digital is a force multiplier. That's where I put it. But the force is actually human. If you have human, naturally the people will start to use the digital tools. But just because you have digital, a classic example, we had a proposal at some point in time to work with Samsung. Now, with your phone, you get a community, or what they call a community is already there as an app in your phone. It's like comes preloaded. And they have 100 million members globally. They have sold so many phones. Go to the community and see how. If you have a Samsung phone, open it today. You may not even have seen it. And if you're going to Samsung members and actually engage with them, then congratulations, because you're one of those unicorns in the world, because nobody's engaging. It is not about the tech. They have not invested in fostering a relationship with the people outside of, hey, here is my new thing. If you'd like it, buy. Or, hey, here is 15% off on the next thing to buy that. So I expect, if you're a large brand, you can discount. That's not going to create any affinity in my mind. Right? The guy, like Sandhya says, your best friends are not transactional relationships. Your best friends are people who help you out, who understood you, who listen to you, who are on your side, who tell you the truth where you're getting off. All these things have to be fostered in a community, I feel. Then it will succeed. Too often we start saying, okay, we are a data-driven organization. Let's look at all the metrics. Are we accomplishing our targets? Are we reaching our numbers, etc.? And we knock this off because compound interest. That's why, like my father-in-law, who's now probably chuckling away because he's believed in compound interest, and I may be the crazy fellow who may have started with equity before I understood banking. Says he understands the steady flow of keeping on doing this, and it pays off in the end. I think that we should do in communities in so many ways.
I think
we have blown past the time, aren't we?
Yes, we have. But I think it's been a wonderful conversation, Naveen. The world of community building is not something I indulge in very often, but it's beautiful. The examples that you gave, they are so relevant. It's I absolutely loved what you said about the Alcoholic Anonymous. I never looked at it from the point of view of community and community building. And I think that's going to be one of my key takeaways from this conversation that we had today. I think Rajesh Gopal has dropped another comment. He's saying thanks, Naveen. Another question. Take the case of building communities for product brands like Harley Davidson, where there are possible touch points between the brand and the consumer in the future, vis-a-vis service brands like say TOEFL and GRE, where the touch points with young test makers is more transient. How would the approach be different?
I'm just trying to understand the question, so answer touch. Okay. So it's when TOEFL GRE. Okay, touch points between young test takers is more transient. Very, very nice thought. And I think I don't know specifically about TOEFL GRE, so I cannot narrate to that component, but I can understand the idea of helping someone if you have been through that same experience before. I'll take it as a parallel. There are two communities that I've been part of, not starting, but I've been part of it. One was a community of people. I spent a significant proportion of my career in the US before I came back to India. And when we were returning back to India, it's like all my adult decisions had happened in the US context. I had never really set up home and lived in India. So I didn't even really I knew how my parents lived and all the adult decisions, right? Mundane things like how to get a phone connection, gas, what does real estate look like. None of this I knew in the Indian context. I only knew in the American context, and I was going to come back to India. One of the biggest advantages to come to India was a group. It still sits. Technically, I think it will be a really old school forum, like one of those discussion boards that you will see, right, where there is nothing sexy about the user interface. But the wisdom of people who went before you and have done this journey before you, every one of them shared all their checklist. Do this first, do this next. They gave back because they've already used it. They've shared their knowledge back to somebody in the past, and that got me into that transient space for that 1 year in time. I say take the same application, says TOEFL GRE, you're not going to do it year after year. What's your incentive to foster community? Is the idea that people learn from people who've gone through the same journey before. There's a beautiful video by one of the Harvard professors called David Meister. Look it up. He talks in one of his talks. He talks about what we hate about those people, and he's talking in this context of doctors or surgeons who are trying to do good things for you. Where he said that think back to a time where the doctor was doing everything right by you medically, but you still hated something about the way he did it. And all of it was in the nature of he didn't listen, he rushed me, he went quickly, and he didn't put me in a very good human space. So this is the reason why everybody going through a new learning experience wants to learn from the experience of people like them who learned it before, rather than from an expert. This is the reason if you are going through life-changing experiences or cancer support groups, find a lot more people who interact with other patients and wanting to listen to doctors. So imagine TOEFL GRE for a young child or a young adult who wants to go to the US. It's not just about TOEFL GRE. That's just the exam component. I'm going to go to America. I want to know how I'm going to land up on that first day. I don't even know how much I should pay for a cab, whether I should take. There are hundreds of other things. Help me dream about the whole ecosystem. I don't make it about TOEFL GRE. That's where my starting point. TOEFL GRE is a means to an end. What is that end? That is that dream. I will aggregate all the people around that and ask people to share A versus B. Share my own. I hope, if I am one of those people who wrote it, I share my experience. Even today, I get calls because TOEFL GRE was one of my pathways to go to the US. And today also, I get calls. And the calls are not about how to write the exam. The calls are about how is life over there? Which one should I choose? And a lot of my advice is usually, it's got nothing to do with the academics. It tells you which one to choose for a social life. Now, those you don't hear this narrative somewhere else, but people help each other out every time in all kinds of ways that we don't realize. We narrow as a brand our locus of information giving to only those things where we feel we have the credibility to give. So we take the expert position from the start. In a community, we are just people helping people. And I think that's the essence of You don't take this as expert recommendation or legally verified nonsense. No, I am a person. I'm telling you my personal experience. This is what I did was. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't help you, tell me what else. How else can I help? I think that a community is free to do, without.
Makes sense, Naveen, actually, because I'm actually, based on what you said, I'm relating to my IELTS experience. Whenever somebody talks to me about IELTS, I get this sense of excitement. And now that you point it out, I realize it's not about taking the IELTS test or scoring well or not scoring well. It's about the overall enthusiasm and the excitement I felt at that time because I was moving to another country. It was a new beginning for me. It was very interesting, absolutely very interesting. Nima actually has a very interesting comment. She's saying, taking off from Rajesh's comment, wanted to mention babycenter.co.uk, where huge numbers of pregnant women, at least in the US, gravitate towards it. Somehow, to be a part of it the moment you get a positive test, and especially with the first pregnancy, the group gives you a safe space to walk the 40 plus weeks with them. This isn't a product and perhaps more comparable to prepping for an exam, though it's next life stage. It is a truly phenomenal sisterhood type ecosystem.
It's exactly like that. I think it's a bang on example, right? And I don't think Johnson & Johnson, which created Baby Center, people will broadly understand. They'll find the linkages to your brand, even if you mention it somewhere around way. That's not the intent. If you take the point that women going through their pregnancy, especially first-time mothers, will have questions that other first-time mothers can share from their experience, and you will find a like-minded person who helped you, or you find resources, and you are a resource created to help the other person in a transitionary life stage. I think a lot of people are going through many of these things. Our life is a series of transitions, right? I don't think there is any permanent life stage at any point in time. But I think, we call it in our construct, I don't want to use more jargon, but we call it the source category. Whatever you are working in is not the category. From a human perspective, let's say if I am an apparel brand, maybe I am not even lifestyle. I am in the area of identity, because when I'm choosing one brand over the other, I'm saying who I am through the brands I choose to display. And what is identity formation is where I have to figure out. And maybe I operate in that space. Or if I am, like in this case, TOEFL GRE, then like you said, it's leaving and going to an entirely new country. What is life going to be? What is going to happen to you because you made this journey? Maybe I need to encourage people to do that. Leave the nest. I'm saying there are hundreds of dimensions in which I could have conversations, which I would have if I met you in a coffee shop and you and I were strangers and you got introduced and you are asking me about TOEFL and GRE. I don't think I'll limit the conversation to just this and then says, oh yeah, now let me go. We'll talk about everything we'll talk about. Right? And I think
speaking of conversations, Naveen, I think this would be a wonderful time for us to ask our community what other conversations they would like to have with us.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think so. I think we should. Guys, yes. What else would you like? Our little community at Center of Gravity, and we have these conversations or these engagements like that. What would you like us to talk about next time? Maybe we know it, maybe we don't know it, and maybe we'll find somebody who'll talk about it, or we will talk in our naivety from our perspective. That doesn't matter, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So if you have something you'd want us to take as a topic in future, please put it there, and we can have a conversation around it.
Because practically this is like a fireside conversation, except it's happening on a Saturday morning and there are no fireplaces here. It's as hot as a furnace itself. But I think it's wonderful. And I'm loving the fact that, people are engaging with us. They're asking these beautiful, lovely questions that is making us all pause and think and contributing. It's almost like they're present, even though we can't see their faces. It's almost like they're present, and it's taking place in a room, and it's lovely.
Yeah. So one last plug: if there are no more questions, this is something I wanted to talk about. Now, if you've seen the URL out there, we have a school through which we have online courses on various aspects, and I have a course on how to build communities. And I think the course is really designed around instilling all the principles of community building and what are the best practices, so you don't make many of the mistakes that we did. There is no promise that you will succeed at doing your communities, but I think building a community, like I said, compound interest. I want to start anybody off right along the principles, along the various questions. Like I love the fact that Rajesh and Gopal asked all these questions, because I've been asked hundreds of these questions from brand marketing people, because it's new territory. I get that. And you want to go down this path. A lot of community building inside brands is also building things internally in the organization. Your challenge actually is not outside, it's inside. And how do you nurture that so that you have much greater chance of success, which entirely comes on the ability to stay committed to this path? Because we all know in brand management, you will move from this role to something else later. But how do you ensure that that community you started, you're still a member of it? How do you foster it, and how do people do that? Is a big part of the discussion. And then, of course, we engage consistently, continuously over a period of time, long after the course is over, hopefully to help people build successful communities. We are like, I mean, I personally am enamored by how people form communities. So I think it's a good thing for all the rest of us who don't have deep pockets, surely, to pay for advertising, and how we can stick it to the big guy. That's my personal agenda, not the agenda of center of gravity.
All right. I think on that note, I think we can call it a day. What was to be a 30-minute conversation has almost become a 1-hour conversation, although Chitra is recommending that we make it a 1-hour conversation to begin with. We will definitely make note of that, Chitra. And all of you who are listening to us, please drop a comment, inform us what you would like to hear us speak about next. What would you like to speak to us about next? That is also a wonderful thought. You can drop it in comments. You can message us specifically, personally. We will definitely respond back, because it's a lovely conversation, as I said earlier. And do like us, do follow us. We've been creating a lot of beautiful content. We want to share a lot of our beautiful experiences and insights that we've gathered over the years. Some of which you would love, some of which you may find relevant, and some of which your friends may also like to hear about. So do share and inform your friends also about us. So yeah, that's about it. Have a nice weekend, guys. See you next Saturday, 10 a.m. right here. And keep an eye on our social media channels. We will definitely inform you what our next subject is going to be about. Any last words, Naveen?
No, thank you so much for spending Saturday morning. I think we love talking. It's great to have an engaged audience.
That's why it's called Stories by COG.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.